I died on my 28th birthday choking on champagne at my brother's celebration party. The party commemorating his company's acquisition by a Fortune 500 corporation for $300 million. The same company I had unknowingly funded with my entire life savings 6 years earlier. As the room spun and my vision darkened, the last thing I saw was my brother Marcus's face, not filled with concern, but with cold calculation. My mother was already turning away, embarrassed by my scene. My father simply sighed, as if I had inconvenienced them all one final time. Then I woke up on my 18th birthday, gasping in my childhood bed, alive. The morning light filtered through the same faded curtains I'd thrown away years ago. My phone, an old model I hadn't seen in a decade, buzzed with a text from my high school boyfriend. The date on the screen made my heart stop, exactly 10 years before my death. I had been given a second chance, and this time, I knew exactly what was coming. My hands were shaking as I sat up, not from fear, but from rage. Every memory of my first life was crystal clear, sharp as broken glass. I remembered everything, every slight, every theft, every moment of betrayal, and most importantly, I remembered exactly how Marcus had built his empire, on the foundation of my stolen dreams and emptied bank account. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how it happened the first time, so you can understand why what I'm about to do was not revenge. It's justice. I was always the invisible daughter, the consolation prize my parents received when they wanted a son. Marcus came 3 years after me, and from the moment he drew his first breath, I ceased to matter. Every family photo was carefully composed to highlight him. Every milestone of mine was overshadowed by his mere existence. Lily, Marcus needs the computer for his essay. Lily, give your brother your room. He needs space for his projects. Lily, we can't afford your art supplies this month. Marcus needs new basketball shoes. I learned to make myself small, to need nothing, to expect nothing. I worked 3 jobs through high school while Marcus played sports and cultivated his charisma. I saved every penny for college, hiding cash in a shoebox under my bed, because I didn't trust my parents not to borrow it for Marcus's needs. By the time I turned 18 the first time, I had saved $47,000. It was enough for 2 years at a state university. It was my ticket out. It was supposed to be mine. That's when Marcus came to me with his eyes shining with that golden boy enthusiasm that made everyone love him. Lily, I have the most incredible opportunity. There's this business competition, and I have an idea that's going to change everything. But I need capital to enter. Just $40,000. I'll pay you back within 2 years, I swear. You're so good with money, you can make it back. But I'll never get an opportunity like this again. I should have said no. God, I should have said no. But he was my little brother. And somewhere in my damaged heart, I still hoped that if I helped him, my family might finally see me, might finally appreciate me, might finally love me. I gave him the money. The business competition was real. His idea, a platform connecting freelance creative professionals with clients, streamlining contracts and payments, was genuinely innovative. He won first place and $50,000 in seed funding. With my $40,000 and his winnings, he had just enough to launch. I waited for my money back. 2 years came and went. Marcus's company, Creative Link, was growing rapidly. He moved out of our parents' house into a sleek downtown apartment. He drove a Tesla. He dated models and influencers. I lived in a studio apartment with 2 roommates and worked as a waitress while taking online classes because I couldn't afford traditional college. Every time I asked about repayment, Marcus would sigh deeply as if I were being unreasonable. The company's in a growth phase, Lily. Every dollar has to be reinvested. You wouldn't understand business. Just be patient. My parents backed him completely. Stop harassing your brother. He's trying to build something. You're being selfish. Family supports family. The irony was suffocating. By the time I was 24, Creative Link was valued at $50 million. Marcus had been featured in Forbes 30 Under 30. He had never paid me back a single dollar. When I brought it up at a family dinner, he laughed. Lily, that was a gift. You can't seriously expect me to repay a gift from my sister. That would be insulting. Besides, I've reinvested everything into the company. I don't have liquid assets. He said this while wearing a watch that cost more than I made in a year. My parents nodded along. He's right, honey. Family doesn't keep score. I stopped asking after that. I stopped attending family dinners too. I threw myself into work, into survival, into the small life I'd built from scraps. I dated occasionally, never seriously. I had friends but kept them at arm's length. The betrayal had hollowed me out. Then, when I was 26, Creative Link caught the attention of Tech Giant Corporation. They wanted to acquire it. The negotiations took 18 months. Marcus was going to become one of the youngest self-made millionaires in the state. My parents threw him a massive celebration party at an upscale hotel ballroom. They invited 300 people. I received an invitation like everyone else, formal and impersonal, because it would look bad if his sister didn't attend. I went because I was still pathetically hoping for something. An acknowledgement, an apology, a sliver of gratitude. Instead, I watched my brother give a speech about his journey, his vision, his determination. He thanked our parents for their unwavering support and sacrifice. He thanked his business partners, his mentors, his team. He thanked his girlfriend for believing in him. He didn't mention me once. When someone asked him how he raised his initial capital, he said, "I won a business competition and worked 3 jobs simultaneously for 2 years. Nobody gave me anything. I built this from nothing, through pure determination." The lie was so casual, so complete, that I felt something break inside me. I drank too much champagne. I confronted him in front of everyone. I told the truth about the $40,000, about how he stole my college fund and never repaid me, about how he built his empire on my sacrifices. My family looked at me with disgust. "Lily's been struggling," my mother said loudly, her voice dripping with false concern. "She's always been jealous of Marcus. It's sad, really." "You're embarrassing yourself," my father hissed. "Stop making up stories." Marcus just smiled sadly, as if I were a pitiable, delusional creature. "I love you, sis. I hope you get the help you need." The room full of strangers looked at me with pity or contempt. I was the crazy sister, the bitter failure, the liar trying to tear down her successful brother. I stumbled out onto the hotel balcony, tears streaming down my face, my throat tight with rage and grief. I grabbed my glass of champagne, drank it down in one burning gulp, and felt my throat close. The glass slipped from my fingers. Someone had poisoned it. To this day, I don't know if it was intentional or a terrible accident, some contamination in the catering. But as I died on the floor of that balcony, listening to the party continue inside, I had one crystal clear thought. If I could do it all over again, I would destroy him. And then I woke up 18 again. The first thing I did was check my shoebox. All $47,000 was there, exactly as I remembered. I sat on my bed, counting it with trembling hands, and started to laugh. The sound was slightly unhinged, but I didn't care. Nobody was home to hear me. I had 10 years of knowledge in an 18-year-old body. I knew exactly which stocks would soar. I knew which cryptocurrencies would explode. I knew which real estate markets would boom. But more importantly, I knew Marcus's entire business model. I had studied it obsessively in my first life, trying to understand what made it so successful, what had been worth more than our relationship. Creative Link worked because Marcus had identified a genuine pain point in the freelance creative industry: the disconnect between clients and freelancers, the difficulty of contracts and payments, the lack of trust and security on both sides. His platform solved all of that elegantly. But I also knew its weaknesses. I knew the features he had launched too late. I knew the partnerships he had failed to secure initially. I knew the marketing strategies he had dismissed and later regretted. I knew where he had wasted time and money. I had a blueprint for success, and I was going to follow it better than he ever could. But first, I needed capital. Real capital. $47,000 wouldn't be enough to beat Marcus at his own game. I needed to multiply it fast. I spent 3 days researching, remembering, planning. Then I opened an online trading account and began moving my money with surgical precision. I bought Bitcoin at $800. I invested heavily in a small tech company called Zoom that nobody had heard of yet. I put money into Tesla before their stock split. I bought shares in a pharmaceutical company I knew was about to announce a breakthrough. I diversified, but only into sure things. Sure because I had already lived through their success. Within 6 months, my $47,000 had become $230,000. Within a year, it was close to $900,000. I liquidated carefully, strategically, never drawing attention. During this time, I played my role perfectly. I was still the invisible daughter, still quiet and accommodating. I attended my high school classes and maintained decent grades. I worked one part-time job instead of three, claiming I wanted to focus on school. My parents barely noticed. Marcus was a senior in high school, already cultivating his golden boy image, already networking and planning. I watched him sometimes, this younger version of my brother who hadn't yet betrayed me but absolutely would. The temptation to confront him was overwhelming, but I restrained myself. Revenge was a dish best served cold, and I was preparing a feast. The business competition he would enter was still 2 years away. I had time. I spent that time becoming someone new. I hired tutors to teach me coding and web development, skills I'd never had time to learn before. I studied business management, marketing, user experience design. I attended online courses from MIT and Stanford. I absorbed everything, like a desperate student before finals, because, in a way, I was. I also started building relationships. I knew which venture capitalists would become major players. I knew which tech journalists would become influential. I knew which developers were brilliant but undiscovered. I reached out carefully, strategically, planting seeds. By the time I turned 19, I had transformed myself from the invisible girl into someone with potential. My portfolio was worth over $2 million. I had skills, knowledge, and connections. I was ready to launch. I registered my company exactly 1 week before Marcus's business competition. I called it Link Creative. Similar enough to be recognizable to me, different enough to avoid trademark issues. My platform did everything Creative Link would do, but better, faster, more elegantly. I had learned from Marcus's future mistakes. I launched in beta, targeting the exact same freelancer communities Marcus would target. I offered lower fees initially to build market share. I implemented the features Marcus would add years to, late. I partnered with payment processors and legal services that would streamline the entire process. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Freelancers loved the platform. Clients loved the security. Within 3 months, I had 15,000 active users. Within 6 months, 50,000. Then Marcus entered his business competition with his revolutionary idea for Creative Link. I was ready. I didn't attend the competition in person, but I watched the live stream from my apartment. Marcus stood on that stage with the same confidence I remembered, the same charisma, pitching the same idea I had already brought to market. The freelance creative economy is broken, he told the judges earnestly. My platform, Creative Link, will fix it by connecting freelancers directly with clients through a secure, streamlined system. The judges looked interested but not amazed. One of them, a sharp-eyed venture capitalist named Sarah Chen, whom I had strategically befriended months earlier, raised her hand. This sounds remarkably similar to Link Creative, which has been operating successfully for several months now with substantial market penetration. What makes your approach different? I watched the color drain from Marcus's face. He hadn't known. He'd been so confident in his originality, so sure of his genius that he hadn't done basic market research. I wasn't aware of that platform, he stammered, but I'm sure my approach is more comprehensive, more user-friendly. Link Creative has 50,000 active users and growing exponentially, another judge interrupted. They've secured partnerships with major industry players and have received excellent reviews. Unless you can demonstrate significant innovation beyond what they're already doing, this is simply a redundant business model. Marcus tried to recover, pitching harder, emphasizing different features, but the damage was done. The judges saw him as derivative, as someone who had either copied an existing platform or failed to do proper research. Either way, it reflected poorly. He placed 7th. No prize money, no seed funding, no glory. I closed my laptop and allowed myself a small smile. This was just the beginning. Over the next 2 years, Link Creative exploded. I was featured in the same Forbes 30 Under 30 list that Marcus would have been on. TechCrunch wrote a glowing profile. Major creative agencies partnered with us. We expanded internationally. I used my foreknowledge ruthlessly. I hired the exact developers who had made Creative Link successful in my first life, offering them better salaries and equity. I secured partnerships with payment processors before they became overwhelmed with competing offers. I implemented AI features years before the competition thought of them. By the time I was 21, Link Creative was valued at $75 million, 50% more than Creative Link had been worth at its peak in my first life. Marcus, meanwhile, was struggling. After his competition failure, he'd tried to launch Creative Link anyway with minimal funding, cobbled together from credit cards and a small loan from our parents. But he was always 3 steps behind me. Every feature he added, I had already implemented better. Every market he entered, I had already dominated. I watched his frustration grow through mutual connections. He was confused, angry, unable to understand why his brilliant idea wasn't working. He blamed the market, he blamed timing, he blamed everyone but himself. He never once suspected his older sister, who had always been so quiet, so invisible, so useless with business matters. Our parents didn't connect the dots either. They knew I was doing something with computers, but they were too focused on Marcus's struggles to pay attention to my success. I kept my distance from family gatherings, claiming work obligations. The few times I did attend, I dressed down and deflected questions about my career. But I was also carefully, methodically, cutting off every avenue Marcus might use to save himself. I knew that in my first life, Marcus had received a crucial investment from Richard Sterling, a wealthy entrepreneur who saw potential in Creative Link's early days. That investment had been the turning point, allowing Marcus to scale up and eventually attract tech giants' attention. So I befriended Richard Sterling myself. I invited him to a Link Creative event, showed him our platform, shared our vision. When he mentioned that a young entrepreneur named Marcus Chen had approached him with a similar idea, I smiled sadly. "Marcus is my younger brother," I said quietly. "He's been trying to replicate my success for years. I feel terrible about it, honestly. I think my achievement has been hard for him, but I can't control what he does." Richard's expression shifted from interest to discomfort. Nobody wants to invest in the derivative brother of an already successful founder. He never took Marcus's calls again. I did this systematically. Every investor Marcus approached, I reached first. Every partnership he sought, I secured exclusively. Every talented employee he tried to recruit, I hired away with better offers. It wasn't enough to succeed. I needed him to fail completely. I needed him to understand what he had taken from me. By the time I was 23, Link Creative was valued at $200 million. We had expanded into Asia and Europe. We had processed over $10 billion in freelance payments. We had become the industry standard. Marcus's Creative Link was circling the drain. He had maybe 5,000 users, most of them inactive. He was deeply in debt. He'd burned through relationships with investors who had given him chances and been disappointed. His reputation in the startup community was mud. That's when I decided it was time for the final blow. I arranged a meeting with Tech Giant Corporation, the same company that had acquired Creative Link in my first life. I knew they were expanding their business services division. I knew they were looking for a freelance platform to integrate into their ecosystem. I knew exactly what they wanted because I had seen the acquisition terms in my first life. I gave them everything they asked for and more. I showed them our superior technology, our massive user base, our international presence. I demonstrated how Link Creative could slot seamlessly into their existing products. They were impressed. They were very impressed. "We'll need to do due diligence," the CEO, James Morrison, told me. "But I'll be frank, Ms. Chen. This is exactly what we've been looking for. We're prepared to make a very substantial offer." "I'm listening," I said calmly, even as my heart raced. $350 million. I kept my face neutral, but inside I was screaming with triumph. 50 million more than Marcus had gotten in my first life. I negotiated up to 400 million because I could, because I knew they'd pay it, because I wanted Marcus to know I had exceeded his greatest achievement. But I wasn't done yet. Before accepting the offer, I made one request. I'd like to acquire some of my smaller competitors before we finalize the deal. Clean up the market, consolidate our position. It would make the acquisition more valuable to you. They agreed readily. They even provided bridge financing to help with the acquisitions. I made a list of targets. There was only one company I actually wanted, Creative Link. I sent Marcus an acquisition offer through my lawyers, $50,000 for all assets and intellectual property of Creative Link, the same amount he'd won in the business competition he'd needed my money to enter. The irony was intentional. His response came back within 24 hours. a furious, profanity-laden email refusing the offer and accusing me of trying to humiliate him. I sent back a revised offer, $25,000 with a deadline of 48 hours before I withdrew completely. This time, his lawyer responded. They wanted to negotiate. Creative Link was worth more than that, they insisted. It had valuable intellectual property, a user base, potential. I had my lawyer send back a detailed breakdown. Creative Link's actual value was negative when you factored in debts, legal liabilities, and lost opportunity costs. I was being generous by offering anything at all. Take it or leave it. Marcus called me directly. It was the first time we'd spoken in years. Lily, his voice was strained, desperate. Please, I know the company isn't doing well, but it's all I have. Don't do this. Do what? I asked calmly. I'm offering to buy your failing business. That's a kindness, Marcus. This is because of the money, isn't it? From when we were kids? I'll pay you back, I swear. Just don't take my company. The audacity almost made me laugh. You mean the $47,000 you stole from me? The money that was supposed to be my future? I didn't steal it. You gave it to me. And I was going to pay you back, but you built a company worth millions and still claimed you had no liquid assets while wearing designer clothes and driving luxury cars? Silence. Here's the truth, Marcus. I don't want your apology. I don't want your money. I want you to understand what you took from me. You didn't just take my savings. You took my education, my opportunities, my faith in family. You took my 20s and turned them into a struggle for survival while you lived like a king. And you did it without a shred of guilt. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry, Lily. I was young and stupid and selfish. Please. The offer was $25,000. It expires in 24 hours. After that, I'll let Creative Link die slowly, buried under debt and irrelevance. Your choice. I hung up. He accepted the offer. What choice did he have? I received the paperwork a week later, signed and notarized. Creative Link belonged to me. I immediately shut it down and absorbed its remaining users into Link Creative. I fired the few employees Marcus had left, offering them positions at my company if they were talented enough. Most weren't. Marcus had never been good at identifying real potential. I kept one thing from Creative Link, the original business plan Marcus had submitted to the competition. I had it framed and hung it in my office as a reminder, not of my victory, but of the cost of betrayal. The acquisition of Creative Link made the news in tech circles. Journalists called it a mercy killing and a consolidation play. One article mentioned that the founder of the acquired company was my younger brother. Another dug deeper and discovered the family connection, creating a narrative of sibling rivalry in tech. A reporter from Forbes called me for comment. There's speculation that this acquisition was personal, given your family relationship with Marcus Chen. Is there any truth to that? Business is always personal, I said. But it's also just business. Creative Link was a competitor with a flawed business model. I made a logical decision to eliminate competition before our acquisition by tech giant corporation. So the acquisition is confirmed? It will be announced next week. $400 million. The article ran with the headline, Link Creative founder Lily Chen sells to tech giant for $400 million after acquiring brother's failing startup. My parents called me for the first time in months, not to congratulate me, to scream at me for humiliating Marcus. How could you do this to your brother? My mother shrieked. He's devastated. His company was his dream. His dream was built on my stolen money, I said coldly. Did you know he never paid me back? Not a single dollar of the $47,000 I gave him? That was a family loan. Family doesn't keep score. You're right. Family doesn't keep score. But I'm not family to you, am I? I never have been. Marcus was always the only child who mattered, so I decided to treat him like you taught me to treat family, as someone whose success requires my sacrifice. You're being vindictive and cruel. No, Mother. I'm being successful. There's a difference. Maybe if you'd ever supported me the way you supported Marcus, you'd understand that. I hung up on her too. My father sent me a long text message about disappointment and family values. I blocked his number. Marcus sent me dozens of messages over the following weeks, ranging from apologetic to angry to desperate. I read none of them. I had said everything I needed to say. The acquisition by tech giant closed 3 months later. $400 million hit my account, minus taxes and legal fees. I walked away with roughly $250 million personally, plus substantial stock options in tech giant. At 23 years old, I was wealthier than Marcus could have dreamed of in my first life. More importantly, I had done it myself, with my own work, my own intelligence, my own determination. I had needed no one's help, no one's support, no one's money. I bought a penthouse in the city Marcus used to live in. I hired an interior designer and created a space filled with light and art and beauty. I donated substantial amounts to scholarships for students from neglectful families. I invested in female-founded startups. I lived well, but not excessively. I had learned the value of money the hard way. I also started therapy. The revenge had been satisfying, but it hadn't healed the wounds. I needed to process the trauma, to understand how to build healthy relationships after such profound betrayal. I needed to learn how to be more than my anger, but I never regretted what I did to Marcus, not for a second. 2 years after the acquisition, I was invited to speak at my old high school's career day. I accepted, curious to see how the place had changed. The auditorium was full of teenagers with varying degrees of interest and boredom. I took the stage and smiled at them. "I'm going to tell you something your parents might not want you to hear," I began. "Family doesn't always mean safety. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you will use you, betray you, and discard you. And society will tell you to forgive them because they're family." The students were suddenly very attentive. "When I was your age, I saved every penny I earned for college. I was careful, disciplined, responsible. My younger brother asked me to loan him that money for a business opportunity. I gave it to him because I believed family helped family. He never paid me back. He built a successful company with my money and claimed he'd done it all himself. My parents supported him completely and told me I was selfish for expecting repayment." I paused, letting that sink in. I could have accepted that. I could have been the good daughter, the supportive sister. I could have made myself smaller and smaller until I disappeared completely, but I didn't. Instead, I taught myself business, I invested wisely, and I built the same company he built, but better. I took every opportunity he thought was his and made it mine. I acquired his failing company for a fraction of what it was worth. And then I sold my company for $400 million. The auditorium was completely silent. I'm not telling you this story to encourage revenge. I'm telling you this story to encourage self-worth. Know your value. Protect your resources. Don't set yourself on fire to keep other people warm, even if those people are family, especially if those people are family, because the most dangerous betrayals come from those who know exactly how much you're willing to sacrifice. I saw a few students nodding, especially the girls who sat quietly in the back, the ones who looked tired and old beyond their years. And if someone does betray you, if they do steal from you and mock you and throw your love back in your face, remember this: the best revenge isn't violence or cruelty. It's building such an incredible life that they choke on their regret. It's succeeding so completely that their failure becomes inevitable by comparison. It's proving that you never needed them at all. The applause was thunderous. Afterward, several students came up to thank me. One girl, probably 16, with eyes that looked too familiar, said quietly, "My older brother takes all my babysitting money. My parents say I should share with family, but I want to save for college." I gave her my card. "Open a bank account in your name only. Never tell them about it. Hide your cash somewhere. They'll never find it. And remember that you owe them nothing. Your future is yours to build." She hugged me, and I felt something loosen in my chest. Maybe this was the real victory, not destroying Marcus, but helping others avoid my fate. I'm 28 now, the age I died in my first life. Sometimes I think about that other timeline, the one where I was poisoned at Marcus's celebration party. I wonder if it really was an accident, or if someone, my mother, perhaps, or Marcus himself, decided I'd become too much of an embarrassment to tolerate. It doesn't matter anymore. That life is gone and I'm still here. Marcus is working as a mid-level manager at a tech company in the Midwest. He's not wealthy, not famous, not special. He's just another person who had potential and squandered it through entitlement and cruelty. From what I hear through mutual connections, he's bitter, constantly complaining about how I stole his success and ruined his life. My parents tried to reconnect last year. They sent a letter explaining that they'd reflected on their mistakes and wanted to rebuild our family. The letter was filled with justifications and excuses, but very little actual accountability. It mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that they were struggling financially and could use some help. I sent back a check for $47,000, the exact amount Marcus had stolen from me, along with a note. This is the amount of support I received from this family. Consider it repaid in full. We're even now. Don't contact me again. They cashed the check. They never wrote back. I've built a new life, a real life. I have friends who value me, not for what I can give them, but for who I am. I've dated, fallen in love, had my heart broken in normal ways by normal people. I've traveled the world, learned new languages, picked up hobbies just for joy rather than survival. I've learned to trust again, carefully, slowly. I sit in my office sometimes looking at that framed business plan from Creative Link and I feel nothing but peace. The anger that drove me for so long has cooled into something else, understanding. I understand now that Marcus was shaped by our parents' favoritism, just as I was shaped by their neglect. He became entitled and careless with others' resources because he was never taught consequences. He believed the world owed him success because that's what our family taught him. But understanding doesn't mean forgiveness. It means clarity. He made his choices. He chose his comfort over my future. He chose his image over honesty. He chose himself again and again at my expense. And when I was finally able to choose myself, he couldn't handle it. That's not my burden to carry. Sometimes people ask me if I'm glad I was reborn, if I would do it all again. The answer is complicated. I lost my first life to betrayal and poison. I gained this life through knowledge and determination. Both versions of me were shaped by trauma, but this version got to fight back. Would I prefer a life where none of this happened? Where my family loved me properly and Marcus never stole from me? Of course. But that's not the hand I was dealt in either timeline. So instead, I built something from nothing. Twice. I turned pain into power, betrayal into victory. I proved that you don't need family support to succeed. You don't need anyone's permission to fight for yourself. You don't need to forgive people who have never truly asked for forgiveness. All you need is to remember your worth, protect your resources, and refuse to make yourself small for anyone else's comfort. Marcus used my savings to start his business. After Rebirth, I started the same one and bankrupted him, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. There's a final detail I haven't mentioned, something I discovered recently that put the entire story into perfect perspective. Last month, I was going through some old family documents I'd retrieved from storage, paperwork and photos from before everything fell apart. Tucked into a forgotten folder was a letter my grandmother had written to me before she died when I was 10 years old. My grandmother was the only family member who ever seemed to see me, clearly. She died of cancer when I was young, too young to fully appreciate her love. But she'd written me this letter, to be given to me when I turned 18. My parents never gave it to me. They probably forgot it existed, too focused on Marcus to remember. The letter was short. My dearest Lily, if you're reading this, I'm gone and you're becoming a woman. I want you to know that I see you. I've always seen you. You are brilliant, strong, and worthy of every good thing in this world. Your parents love you, but they're blinded by their desire for a son. They don't see how they're failing you. They don't see how much you sacrifice. But I see it, sweetheart. I'm leaving you something. Not much, but something. There's a bank account in your name with $50,000. Your grandfather and I saved it for your education. The account information is with my lawyer, Samuel Pierce, in Boston. He'll give it to you when you turn 18. Don't tell your parents. Don't tell Marcus. This is yours, Lily. Your future, your freedom, your choice. Promise me you'll use it for yourself, not for anyone else. Be strong, my darling girl. And remember that you owe your family nothing but truth, and you owe yourself everything. All my love, Grandma Rose. I sat there with that letter in my shaking hands, tears streaming down my face. In my first life, I never knew this account existed. My parents had intercepted the information from the lawyer, or maybe the lawyer never knew how to reach me after I moved out. That $50,000 probably still sits in that account, untouched, waiting for a girl who died and was reborn. But in this life, I found the letter, and I called Samuel Pierce. The account was real. The money was still there. With 18 years of compound interest, it was now worth over $90,000. I didn't need it. I had hundreds of millions, but I took it anyway because it was mine. Because my grandmother had wanted me to have it. Because it was proof that at least one person in my family had loved me properly. I used that 90,000 to establish the Rose Chen Scholarship Fund for young women from neglectful families. Every year, we give 10 full-ride scholarships to girls who have been overlooked, underestimated, or actively sabotaged by their families. Girls who saved their babysitting money in hidden accounts. Girls who worked 3 jobs while their brothers played sports. Girls who learned too young that family doesn't always mean love. We tell them, you are seen, you are valued, you deserve every opportunity, and you owe them nothing. Last week, one of our first scholarship recipients graduated with a degree in computer science. She sent me a photo of herself at graduation, holding her diploma, smiling so wide her face looked ready to split. She told her family not to come to the ceremony. She celebrated with her friends, her chosen family, instead. In the photo, she's wearing a silver necklace with a small charm, a phoenix rising from ashes. I'm wearing the same necklace now. I bought it after my company sold, after the dust settled, after I'd proven everything I needed to prove. It reminds me that I burned down and rose up, that I died and came back stronger, that destruction and creation are sometimes the same thing. Marcus sends me an email every year on my birthday. He never says much, just, "Happy birthday, Lily," and sometimes, "I'm sorry," or, "I hope you're well." I never respond. What would I say? That I forgive him? I don't. That I hate him? I don't. That I think about him? I barely do. He's become irrelevant to me, which is perhaps the greatest victory of all. My parents are growing old. I hear they're in poor health, struggling financially despite the money I sent them years ago. Marcus can't help them. He has his own family to support now, his own children, who will hopefully learn different lessons than we did. My parents have hinted through distant relatives that they'd like to reconcile, to meet me for coffee, to explain themselves properly. I've declined. Some bridges are meant to stay burned. People sometimes ask if I'm lonely, living this way. If I regret cutting off my entire biological family. If I wish things had gone differently. I tell them, I'm not lonely, I'm selective. There's a difference. I've built a family of choice, friends who show up, partners who respect me, mentors who guide me, and young women I help who remind me why the fight mattered. These people know me, truly know me, and choose to love me anyway. That's more valuable than any blood relation ever was. And on the days when I do feel the ache of what I lost, not the family I had, but the family I wish I'd had, I sit in my office and look at that framed business plan. I remember dying at 28, choking on champagne while my brother celebrated with my stolen money. I remember waking up at 18 with a second chance and a burning purpose. I remember everything I built from nothing but knowledge and spite and the refusal to stay small. And I smile. Because Marcus used my savings to start his business, and after Rebirth, I started the same one and bankrupted him, and the girl I used to be, the invisible daughter who gave everything and received nothing, would be so proud of who I became. That's enough. That's everything.